The moment my sister started laughing at me, I knew something was about to change, just not in the way anyone in that room expected. The sound of glasses clinking and low conversation filled the house, but it was Jessica's voice that cut through everything, sharp and effortless, like she had been waiting all night for the perfect moment. "I mean, come on, Emily," she said, shaking her head with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 35 and still single? Don't you ever get tired of being alone? A few people chuckled, some out of discomfort, others because it was easier than saying nothing at all. I felt every pair of eyes shift toward me, waiting, measuring, silently agreeing with her. I forced a small laugh, the kind you give when you don't want to ruin the mood, and took a sip of my drink even though I hadn't touched it all evening. Jessica leaned back against the kitchen counter like she owned the room, her polished life practically glowing around her. Perfect husband, perfect house, perfect stories she never got tired of repeating. "I just don't get it," she continued, glancing at the others as if inviting them to join in. "You're smart, you're nice. But at some point, don't you think something's wrong?" The word wrong lingered in the air longer than it should have. I felt it settle on me like a label I never asked for. My mom shifted slightly in her seat, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. My cousin looked down at his phone. No one stepped in. No one ever did. I kept my expression calm, steady, practiced. Years of moments like this had taught me how to stay quiet, how to let the storm pass without reacting. But inside something was tightening, not breaking, just focusing. Jessica wasn't done. She never was. "I mean, I met Daniel when I was 26, she added, casually brushing imaginary dust off her sleeve. "By 30, we already had the house, the baby, everything figured out. You've had almost a decade more, Em. What happened?" A few more laughs, softer this time. I set my glass down carefully on the counter, making sure it didn't make a sound. My phone buzzed in my pocket once, then again, then a third time in quick succession. I didn't check it. Not yet. I could feel the weight of it, though, like a quiet reminder that there was more happening beyond this room, beyond their assumptions. Jessica noticed the movement anyway. "Oh, don't tell me that's work," she teased. "Please tell me you at least have a social life." I glanced at her, meeting her eyes for the first time that night, and for just a second something shifted, something she didn't understand. I almost said something. Almost. But instead, I smiled, small and unreadable, and slipped my phone back into my pocket. The buzzing stopped. The room settled again. And then, right as Jessica opened her mouth to say something else, the doorbell rang. The sound of the doorbell cut cleanly through the room, sharp enough to interrupt Jessica mid-sentence. And for a brief second everything froze as if the house itself had paused to listen. Jessica blinked, slightly annoyed, then let out a short laugh as she crossed her arms. "Well, that is probably for you," she said, tilting her head toward me with a smirk. "Maybe your mystery date finally showed up." A few people chuckled again, softer this time, more uncertain, as if they were not sure how far the joke was supposed to go. I did not respond right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch just a little longer than expected, long enough for the attention in the room to shift from amusement to curiosity. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, steady and insistent now, like a countdown I could feel rather than hear. My dad cleared his throat lightly. "I can get it," he offered, already starting to stand, but I placed my hand gently on the counter and shook my head. "No, it is okay," I said calmly, my voice even, almost too even for the moment. "I will get it." Jessica raised an eyebrow, watching me closely now, like she was trying to figure out what she had missed. I could feel her eyes follow me as I stepped away from the kitchen and walked down the short hallway toward the front door. Each step felt deliberate, measured, not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. Behind me, the room had gone quieter than before. The laughter had faded, replaced by that subtle tension people feel when something unexpected is about to happen. I reached for the door handle and paused for half a second, not because I was unsure, but because I knew that once I opened it, everything in that house would shift in a way that could not be undone. Then I turned the handle and opened the door. Standing on the front porch was a man in a dark tailored suit, perfectly pressed, posture straight, his presence calm but unmistakably professional. A black sedan idled at the curb behind him, its headlights cutting softly through the evening. He gave a polite, composed nod the moment he saw me. "Good evening, Miss Carter," he said, his tone respectful, practiced. "They are ready for you." For a brief second, neither of us moved. Then I gave a small nod in return. "Thank you," I replied quietly. Behind me, I could feel it before I heard it, the shift in the air as people in the kitchen leaned, listened, tried to piece together what was happening without seeing it yet. Jessica's voice floated down the hallway, lighter now but edged with something else. "Emily, who is it?" she called out. I did not answer her right away. Instead, I stepped slightly outside, lowering my voice just enough to keep the conversation private. "Is everything set?" I asked. The man nodded once. "Yes, ma'am. The board is waiting, and the call has been delayed for you as requested." I let out a slow breath, not of relief but of confirmation. Timing mattered. It always did. "All right," I said. "Give me 1 minute." He stepped back respectfully, giving me space, and I turned back toward the open door. From where I stood, I could see part of the kitchen now, the silhouettes of people who had shifted closer without realizing it, drawn in by curiosity. Jessica had moved toward the hallway, her expression no longer amused, but searching, trying to connect something that did not quite make sense yet. Our eyes met across the distance. For the first time that night, she did not have anything to say. I held her gaze for a brief moment, not challenging, not defensive, just steady. Then I reached for my coat by the door, slipping it on with the same calm precision I had carried all evening. The room stayed quiet, waiting, watching, and I could feel it clearly now, the exact moment when everything they thought they understood about me was beginning to come apart piece by piece. Even though I had not explained a single thing, I could feel every pair of eyes on me now as I stepped fully back into the house, the quiet stretching so tightly it almost felt fragile, like one wrong word could crack it. Jessica had already moved closer, standing just a few feet away, her expression no longer confident but uncertain, searching my face for something familiar that she could hold on to. "Emily, what is going on?" she asked, her voice softer than before, but still carrying that edge of disbelief. I adjusted my coat calmly, smoothing the sleeve as if nothing unusual had happened, even though I could sense the weight of the moment pressing in from every direction. "I just need to head out for a bit," I said evenly, my tone controlled, almost gentle. That answer did not satisfy anyone. I could see it in the way my mom leaned forward slightly, in the way my dad crossed his arms as if trying to make sense of something that did not fit, and especially in the way Jessica frowned, her confidence slipping just enough to reveal the first crack. "Head out," she repeated, glancing toward the front door as if expecting the answer to be standing there. "Who was that? And why did he call you Miss Carter like that?" I met her gaze again, steady, not confrontational, just present. "It is just work," I replied, letting the words sit there without elaboration. Jessica let out a short laugh, but this time it sounded forced, like she was trying to pull the situation back into something she could control. "Work," she said. "Since when does your work send someone in a suit to pick you up like that? What, are you secretly running a company now?" There was a pause after she said it, a brief moment where the room seemed to hold its breath, because even she seemed to realize how close she had come to something she did not fully understand. I did not rush to answer. Instead, I reached for my bag by the chair, lifting it onto my shoulder with a quiet, practiced motion. The same motion I had done countless times before, just not in front of them. My phone buzzed again, and this time I took it out, glancing at the screen for a second before slipping it back into place. "I really do have to go," I said, still calm, still measured. Jessica took a step closer, her voice dropping slightly, more serious now. "Emily, stop. You cannot just walk out like this after everything. What is going on?" I could hear it clearly now, the shift in her tone from mockery to something closer to unease, maybe even a hint of concern, though it was tangled with confusion. I looked at her for a moment longer, not with anger, not with resentment, but with a quiet clarity that had taken years to build. "Nothing is wrong," I said simply. "I just never explained everything." That only made it worse for her. I could see it in the way her expression tightened, the way she glanced back at the others as if hoping someone else would step in and decode the situation for her. No one did. They were all watching now, silent, waiting for something that had not been handed to them yet. I walked past her toward the door, each step steady, unhurried, and when I reached the threshold, I paused just long enough to turn slightly back toward the room. "I will be back later," I added, my voice still calm, still even, but carrying something new now, something that made people listen differently. Then I stepped outside, the cool evening air settling around me as the man in the suit opened the car door without a word. As I moved toward the waiting car, I could feel it clearly, the exact moment behind me when the silence inside the house shifted into something else entirely, something heavier, something filled with questions that no one there was ready to answer yet. The car door closed with a soft, controlled sound, sealing me into a space that felt completely separate from the house I had just left behind, and for the first time that evening, I allowed myself a slow breath as the driver pulled away from the curb. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, its warm lights fading into the background, along with the voices, the assumptions, and the version of me they had always believed in. The man in the suit sat in the front passenger seat, already focused, already moving forward. "We are 10 minutes out," he said, glancing briefly at me through the mirror. "They have been informed you are on your way." I nodded once, shifting slightly as I looked out at the quiet suburban streets passing by, familiar and distant at the same time. For years, I had moved between two worlds without ever fully connecting them, keeping one carefully contained so the other could remain simple, predictable, manageable. It had been easier that way. No explanations. No expectations. Just silence where there could have been questions. My phone buzzed again, and this time I answered it. "This is Emily," I said, my tone changing subtly, sharper now, more focused. A voice came through immediately, calm but urgent. "We have everyone ready, but there are concerns about the final numbers. They are asking if you are still moving forward with the decision." I glanced at the time on the screen, calculating without needing to think too hard. "Yes," I replied. "Nothing changes. I will handle it when I arrive." There was a brief pause on the other end, then a quick, relieved response. "Understood. We will be ready." The call ended and I lowered the phone, the quiet of the car settling in again. Outside, the streets transitioned from quiet residential blocks to wider roads, then into the steady rhythm of the city at night, lights stretching out in every direction, buildings rising higher, the energy shifting into something faster, more precise. This was the world I understood completely, the one where every decision had weight, where every move mattered, where hesitation cost more than silence ever did. And yet, I had never brought any of that back home. Not to them. Not to Jessica. I leaned back slightly, letting my thoughts drift just enough to acknowledge what had happened. Jessica's voice, her laughter, the way she had looked at me like I was something unfinished, something behind. It had never really been about her. It had been about what people saw when there was nothing else to fill the space. No explanations meant assumptions. And assumptions over time turned into certainty. The driver slowed slightly as we approached a stoplight, the glow of red reflecting briefly across the windshield. "Do you need anything before we arrive?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. Everything is already in place." The light turned green, and the car moved forward again, smooth and uninterrupted. I checked my phone one more time, scanning the messages, the updates, the confirmations, all aligned, all waiting. This was the moment everything had been building toward for months, and the timing, whether intentional or not, had landed exactly on tonight. I almost smiled at that, but not quite. Instead, I looked ahead, focusing on what mattered next. Behind me, back at that house, there would be questions now. Conversations. Doubt replacing certainty. Jessica would replay every word she had said, every assumption she had made, trying to find where things had shifted without her noticing. But there would be no clear answer waiting for her, not yet. Because I had never corrected her. I had never needed to. The car turned onto a wider avenue, the building ahead coming into view, tall, lit, unmistakable. The driver straightened slightly, preparing to pull in. "We are here," he said. I gathered my bag, my focus sharpening completely now, everything else falling away. As the car slowed to a stop, I reached for the door handle, knowing that once I stepped out, there would be no room for hesitation, no space for anything except the role I had built, the one they had never seen. And this time I was not hiding it. The car came to a smooth stop in front of the building, its glass exterior reflecting the city lights like a mirror of everything I had worked toward. And before the engine had even fully settled, the man in the suit stepped out and opened my door with quiet precision. I stepped onto the pavement, heels meeting concrete with a steady, controlled rhythm, and immediately the energy shifted around me, subtle but unmistakable, like stepping into a space where every movement had purpose. The entrance doors opened before I even reached them, and inside, the lobby was bright, polished, alive with quiet urgency. People moved quickly but carefully, voices low, eyes focused, and the moment I walked in, that movement adjusted just slightly, just enough to acknowledge my presence without breaking the flow. "Good evening, Miss Carter," a woman at the front desk said, standing a little straighter as I passed. I gave a brief nod, not slowing down. "Conference room?" I asked. 32nd floor. "Everyone is already there," she replied immediately. Of course they were. I moved toward the elevators, my reflection catching briefly in the mirrored wall. Composed, controlled, exactly as I needed to be. The doors opened without delay, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the top floor. As the elevator began its smooth ascent, I could feel the shift complete itself, the last traces of the evening at my parents' house fading into the background, replaced entirely by focus. This was where I did not hesitate. This was where I did not explain. The elevator doors opened directly into a quiet hallway, and at the end of it, a set of glass doors revealed the conference room, lights bright, figures seated, all attention already centered on the empty chair at the head of the table. As soon as I stepped through, the room changed. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, papers stilled, and every person turned toward me at once. "Emily," one of the men said, standing immediately, relief evident but controlled. "We were about to call again." "I said I would be here," I replied, setting my bag down calmly at the head of the table. I did not raise my voice, but I did not need to. The room was already listening. I took my seat, glancing briefly at the documents laid out in front of me. Numbers, projections, decisions that had taken months to build and minutes to finalize. "Where are we?" I asked. A woman to my right leaned forward slightly. There is hesitation from two board members. They are concerned about the scale of the expansion. I nodded once, already understanding the concern without needing it explained. "And the rest?" "Ready to proceed. They are waiting on your confirmation." Of course they were. I folded my hands lightly on the table, looking around the room, meeting each gaze in turn, not rushing, not avoiding, just steady. "We move forward," I said. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just decision. There was a brief silence, the kind that always followed a definitive answer, not because people were unsure, but because they were recalibrating around it. Then one by one heads nodded. Notes were taken. The energy shifted from waiting to execution. "All right," the man across from me said, already reaching for his phone. "We will inform the others." I leaned back slightly, watching the room come alive again. Every person moving with renewed clarity, direction replacing doubt. For a moment, just a brief one, I thought about Jessica again, about the look on her face when she realized something did not add up, about the questions that would only grow the longer I stayed silent. She had always believed she understood me because I had never corrected her, because I had never needed to prove anything. But this room, this moment, this was the part of me she had never even considered. I picked up the pen in front of me and signed the final page without hesitation, the ink settling into place like a line drawn between who they thought I was and who I had always been. And for the first time that night, there was no separation between those two worlds anymore. The room did not relax after the decision, it sharpened, every person moving with a new level of precision as calls were made, confirmations sent, and numbers recalculated in real time. And I stayed exactly where I was, watching it unfold with the kind of calm that only came from knowing this was already under control long before anyone else realized it. "Press is already picking it up," someone said from the far end of the table, glancing at a tablet. "The announcement is spreading faster than expected." I nodded slightly. "Let it," I said. "Do not slow it down. Momentum was not something you paused. It was something you directed." The man to my left leaned in slightly. "There is one more thing," he said carefully. "They are asking if you want to make a statement tonight or wait until morning." I considered it for a brief moment, not because I was unsure, but because timing always mattered more than words. "Morning," I replied. "Let the numbers speak first." He nodded immediately, already making a note. Around me, the room continued to move, efficient, focused, aligned, and for a moment, I let myself observe it without speaking, taking in the exact result of years of quiet work. Decisions made without recognition, risks taken without announcement. None of this had been sudden. None of it had been luck. It had been built piece by piece in silence. My phone lit up again on the table, vibrating softly this time, and I glanced down at it. A name appeared on the screen that I did not expect to see so soon. Jessica. For a second I did not move. The room continued around me unaware, but that single name carried a different kind of weight, one that did not belong to this space. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times, the vibration steady, insistent, familiar in a way the earlier calls had not been. Then I picked it up. Emily. Jessica's voice came through immediately. No hesitation this time. No teasing tone. Just confusion wrapped in urgency. What is going on? Mom just turned on the television and your name is... It is everywhere. They are talking about some deal, some company, and they just said your name like everyone is supposed to know who you are. What is happening? I did not answer right away. I let her words settle, not because I needed time, but because I understood this moment for what it was. This was the shift. Not the doorbell. Not the car. Not even this room. This was where her version of me stopped making sense. I told you, I said calmly, my voice steady, unchanged. It is just work. There was a pause on the other end, longer this time, heavier. Do not do that, she said, her voice tightening. Do not say it like that. This is not normal. You do not just leave dinner and suddenly end up on the news. Emily, what are you not telling us? Around me, the conversation in the room continued, but quieter now, a few people noticing the call, recognizing the name, choosing not to interrupt. I leaned back slightly in my chair, my gaze steady, my tone even. I am not hiding anything, I said. I just never explained it. Another silence followed, but this one was different, filled with realization rather than confusion. I could almost hear her replaying everything in her head, every assumption, every comment, every time she had reduced my life to something simple enough to understand. So all this time, she started, then stopped, unable to finish the thought. I did not help her complete it. I did not need to. I have to go, I said instead, not abruptly, not dismissively, just matter of fact. We can talk later. Emily, wait, she said quickly, but I had already ended the call. The room returned to full clarity around me, voices rising again, decisions moving forward, and I placed my phone back on the table without hesitation. One of the board members looked at me carefully. Everything all right? He asked. I met his gaze and gave a small nod. Yes, I said. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. And for the first time there was nothing left that needed to stay separate. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes, each decision locking into place with a clarity that left no room for doubt, and by the time the final confirmation was sent, the room shifted from intensity to controlled relief, not celebration, not distraction, just the quiet acknowledgement that something significant had been set into motion. I closed the folder in front of me and stood, and immediately the others followed, a subtle but automatic response that had nothing to do with formality and everything to do with alignment. We will reconvene at 9 in the morning, I said, my tone steady, leaving no ambiguity. Have the updated reports ready before then. There were nods, quick responses, people already gathering their things, and within moments, the room began to clear, each person moving with purpose, carrying their part of the outcome forward. I remained for a few seconds longer, alone now in the quiet space, the city light stretching beyond the glass walls, steady and endless. For a moment I allowed myself to stand still, not thinking about the next step, not calculating anything, just acknowledging the exact point I had reached. Then I picked up my bag and walked out. The hallway was empty, the building quieter now, but still alive with late-night work, and as I stepped into the elevator, the doors closed softly behind me, sealing the shift once again. As the elevator descended, I caught my reflection in the mirrored surface, composed, unchanged, but somehow clearer now, like everything had finally aligned into a single version of myself that no longer needed to be divided. My phone buzzed again in my hand, and this time I already knew who it was before I looked. Jessica. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then answered. Emily, she said immediately, her voice different now, stripped of the sharpness it had earlier, replaced with something uncertain, almost careful. Are you coming back tonight? I leaned lightly against the wall of the elevator, watching the numbers count down. Yes, I said. I will be there in about 30 minutes. There was a pause, then she spoke again, quieter this time. Everyone is still here. I could picture it clearly without needing to see it, the same room, the same people, but the energy completely changed, conversations no longer casual, but filled with questions that no one had answers for. Okay, I replied simply. Another pause, longer now. Emily. I did not know, she said, and this time there was no attempt to cover it with humor, no deflection, just a statement that carried more weight than anything she had said earlier that night. I let that sit for a moment. I know, I said. The elevator slowed as it reached the ground floor, the doors opening smoothly, and I stepped out into the lobby, the quiet hum of the building surrounding me once again. I will see you soon, I added. Emily, she said quickly, stopping me before I could end the call. Wait. I paused, not speaking, giving her the space she clearly needed. I am sorry, she said, the words coming out slower than expected, like she had to choose them carefully. About earlier. I did not understand. I closed my eyes briefly, not out of frustration, not out of relief, just acknowledging the shift. We will talk when I get there, I said, keeping my tone even, not dismissing her, but not resolving it either. Okay, she replied quietly. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my bag as I walked toward the entrance, where the car was already waiting. The driver stepped forward immediately, opening the door, and I got in without hesitation. As the car pulled away from the building, the city lights moved past in steady lines, and for the first time that night, the direction felt different. Not forward into something unknown, but back toward something unfinished. Back toward the same house, the same people, but not the same version of me they had seen just hours ago. And this time, there would be no silence to fill in the gaps for them. The car slowed as it turned back onto the quiet suburban street, the contrast almost surreal after the sharp energy of the city, and as we approached the house, I could see that the lights were still on, brighter than before, like no one had even considered leaving. The driver pulled to a smooth stop in front of the house, and for a brief second I remained still, looking at the familiar place that had always felt simple, predictable, unchanged, except now it was neither of those things anymore. We will be here when you are ready, the driver said calmly. I nodded once. Thank you. I stepped out of the car, the night air cooler now, quieter, and as I walked toward the front door, I could already sense the shift waiting inside. The door opened before I even reached for it. Jessica stood there like she had been waiting, her expression completely different from earlier, no trace of the smirk, no hint of amusement, just uncertainty and something else that had not been there before, something closer to humility. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped aside slightly, giving me space to walk in. Everyone is still here, she said quietly, almost like a warning. I nodded and stepped inside. The room fell silent immediately. Every conversation stopped, every movement paused, and just like earlier, all attention turned toward me. But this time it was not curiosity mixed with judgment. It was something heavier, something filled with questions that no one wanted to ask out loud first. I walked into the center of the room calmly, setting my bag down by the chair I had left earlier, the same glass still sitting untouched on the counter, exactly where I had placed it. It felt like a different night entirely, even though only a few hours had passed. My mom was the first to speak, her voice careful. Emily, we saw the news. I met her gaze, steady, not avoiding, not explaining more than necessary. Yes, I said simply. My dad shifted slightly, crossing his arms again, but this time it was not out of skepticism. It was more like he was trying to process something that did not fit into the version of me he had always known. They said you are leading the deal, he said. That company. That is yours? I paused for a brief moment, not because I needed to think, but because I understood what that question really meant. Yes, I answered. No elaboration. No build-up. Just the truth finally spoken out loud in this room. A quiet ripple moved through the group. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the subtle sound of assumptions breaking apart. Jessica was standing a few feet away, watching me closely, her arms no longer crossed, her posture open but unsure. For how long? She asked, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. I looked at her. Years, I said. That word landed differently than anything else. Years. Not recent. Not sudden. Not accidental. Years of something she had never seen, never asked about, never imagined. She let out a small breath, almost like she had been holding it without realizing. And you just never said anything? I gave a slight shake of my head. No one asked, I replied calmly. That was not an accusation. It was just the truth. The room stayed quiet, heavier now, not uncomfortable but real. The kind of silence that came when people realized how much they had missed simply because they thought they already understood. My mom stepped forward slightly. Why would you not tell us? She asked gently. I looked around the room at each familiar face, at the place that had always defined a simpler version of me, and then back at her. Because it did not change anything, I said. Not until now. And that was the moment it fully settled, not just for them but for me too. There was no separation left anymore. No quiet version hidden behind assumptions. Just the truth standing in the same room where it had never been seen before. No one spoke for a few seconds after that, not because they did not have anything to say, but because whatever they thought they knew no longer fit together the way it had before, and I could see it clearly in their faces, the quiet recalculating, the realization settling in piece by piece. Jessica looked at me differently now, not like someone trying to figure out what was wrong with me, but like someone trying to understand what she had missed. She took a slow step closer, her voice careful, almost hesitant. All those times when we talked, when I asked you about your life, you never mentioned any of this. I met her gaze, steady and calm. You did not really ask, I said. You assumed. The words were not sharp, not meant to hurt, just clear. She let out a small breath, her eyes dropping for a moment before lifting back to mine. I thought I knew, she admitted quietly. I thought I understood what your life looked like. I nodded slightly. I know. Around us, the room remained still, but it was not the same silence as before. It was softer now. Less judgment, more awareness. My dad uncrossed his arms, shifting his weight like he was trying to approach something unfamiliar without pushing too quickly. You built all of that on your own? He asked. I gave a small nod. Yes. He looked at me for a moment longer, then nodded back, slower this time, like he was adjusting his perspective in real time. My mom stepped closer, her expression warm but thoughtful. We are proud of you, she said, and I could tell she meant it, but there was something else underneath, something like regret for not seeing it sooner. I gave her a small, genuine smile. Thank you. Jessica was still watching me, processing, her usual confidence replaced with something quieter, more honest. I am sorry, she said again, this time without hesitation. Not just for tonight. For everything I said before. All those times I made it sound like you were behind. She stopped herself, but the meaning was already clear. I shook my head slightly. You were not trying to be cruel, I said. You just filled in the gaps with what made sense to you. That seemed to land harder than anything else. She nodded slowly like she understood that now. I wish I had asked instead, she said. I wish I had listened more. I held her gaze for a moment, then gave a small shrug. You can now. That was it. No lecture. No dramatic moment. Just an opening, simple and direct. The tension in the room eased just a little, not completely gone, but no longer heavy. Conversations would come later, questions, explanations, all of that, but they did not need to happen all at once. I reached for my glass on the counter, taking a small sip for the first time that night, and set it back down. Everything felt different, but also strangely balanced, like something that had been uneven for a long time had finally settled into place. Jessica let out a quiet laugh, not mocking this time, just a little self-aware. I guess I owe you dinner, she said, a small attempt to bridge the gap in a way that felt natural to her. I smiled slightly. Maybe, I replied. But next time, just ask me how I am doing. She nodded, more serious now. I will. The room slowly began to come back to life, conversations restarting, but softer, more thoughtful, and I stood there for a moment longer, looking around at the same people, the same space, but seeing it all with a clarity that had not been there before. Nothing about me had changed in those few hours. The only difference was that they finally saw what had always been there. And this time there was nothing left unsaid between who I was and who they thought I was.